You've always done this in
front of all these folks. So,
yeah.
It was a great conversation about that. I think she knows that folks in Washington, particularly Nancy Pelosi, are completely out of touch. They're taking this country in the wrong direction. And she knows she's going to go to Washington and support that same leadership. And if she were to win this race, that's what we would see happen. And that's, I think voters need to understand that she can't come here and say she's a fiscal conservative when all of her policies are fiscally liberal, and she supports a very fiscally liberal speaker.
She keeps bringing up your 2003 tax vote. Is that relevant? Can you explain that? What do you tell people when they ask about that?
Well, what's relevant is what's going to happen in Congress.
Yeah, but about that one.
This is what the most relevant topic is, what's going to happen in Congress next year. And so we can talk. I was in the legislature for 8 years. Stephanie hasn't gotten involved in public service, so she doesn't have to go on record on it. So I've gone on record on a ton of votes. The truth is, she supported a $300 million tax increase. It was in the legislature this year. She supports higher taxes in Washington. She supports the Obama health care bill, which raises taxes on Americans. And she supports the Bush tax cuts expiring, which would raise taxes on everyone in this country, including you and me, and everyone in this room. So if everyone wants to see a tax increase in this country, then Stephanie would be their candidate.
What was different about that tax increase? Was that a different Kevin Yoder, or was that a different tax increase?
Well, that issue never became law, first of all. So that tax increase never happened. And we're talking about 7 or 8 years ago. It's a completely different time in the period, and a completely different economy. In the future, what we're focused on is we will not support additional taxes. She has said she will. She said she would let the Bush tax cuts expire. And so it's an attempt by a working day to distract voters from the actual real votes their congressman's going to take next year, and that's what's most important.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. See you tonight.
I'll vote for John Boehner or one of the others.
I'm saying I would vote for John Boehner, but there may be other speakers. I would vote for John Boehner. I would vote for some of the other Republican candidates. My point is that on the up or down question of Boehner or Pelosi, I'll be clear. If John Boehner's Republican candidate, I will vote for her. Will she be clear if Nancy Pelosi's the Democratic candidate? Will she vote for her?
What if it's representing the candidate? What if it's representing the crowd? What if it's representing the line? What if it's representing the candidate? Of those four, who do you vote for?
Of those four? Correct. I don't know that I've made a decision of those four. I don't know that they're all running for Congress. There are 200 and some Republicans there. What we do know, Mike, what we do know that John Boehner is a candidate for Speaker, and Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker. I've said I would vote for John Boehner for Speaker. Will she say she'll vote for Nancy Pelosi? We know she will. I don't know why she continues to run from the question. It's a very simple and direct question. Why can't she answer basic yes or no questions? If you ask me a question, will I vote for John Boehner for Speaker? The answer is yes. If you ask her a question, will she vote?
Well, I might vote for somebody else.
If John Boehner doesn't run for Speaker, I would vote for a different Republican candidate. But I would vote for John Boehner. She won't answer a direct question about Nancy Pelosi. If Nancy Pelosi is the only Democratic candidate, will she vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker? She will never answer that direct question. If John Boehner is the only candidate, Republican candidate for Speaker, I will vote for him.
And would you be in line with John Boehner and some of his remarks that he's made during this campaign as a minority leader?
We certainly don't agree with every single thing John Boehner has said. When you name one, and I'll tell you whether I agree or disagree.
Don't ask, don't tell.
What's his position?
I'm asking you a question.
You're asking me if I know John Boehner's position on every issue? I do not. Okay, thanks.
If you don't mind sliding, yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so which one is the person that keeps following Stephanie Moore and asking about Pelosi? Which one of you guys? He's not here.
Might be this gentleman.
Okay. Yeah. How are things going?
Very good.
I got your press release today. Talking about
fundraising.
contribution. Okay, If you can just stay right there, that'd be perfect. Press play. Just so I can hear Mike Lowell's. Tell me your name.
Oh, my name Kevin Yoder. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thanks. So when I know that there's many issues that we can talk about as you did
Sure.
today, but those are not necessarily the things the ads are focusing on. And one of the things, two things that I've really noticed the ads and seems to be growing themes in this campaign as the mudslinging start is career politicians who has more loyalty to Washington, whether it's to Nancy Pelosi, as you've mentioned many times, or when Morris is your career politician. The other thing is contributions money, how special interest money spent, money that has been given to you, over the last session, over the last 8 years. So I'm going to start there about contributions. You said $730,000 has come in just one quarter?
Yes, in the third quarter.
Yeah, in the third quarter. And that's, you say record-breaking?
We believe it is.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly? I mean, does that mean that, A, you just got a lot of contacts and you are a career politician, or does that mean that people are hearing the message and liking it?
Well, people are tired of what's happening in Washington, and they feel like the November 2nd election is an opportunity to send a message to the politicians and bureaucrats there who are taking our country off track in a completely different direction than Kansans want them to go. And so this election on November 2nd is about all these issues we're talking about in this race. And you brought up the fact, I guess, Amy, that we're running ads. I mean, our ads are focused on job creation, getting the economy rolling again, small business owners, cap and trade, card check, taxes. Those are what our ads talk about, because we think these issues are critical to the future of this country. We have got to get Americans back to work again, and we've got to stop the overspending, and that's what we focus our ads and our time on. And certainly when we go out and talk to voters and they hear our positive message about the future and they realize that they can send someone new who will be a messenger, someone who will be a vocal person to stand up for this community, they're willing to support us with their resources and their time.
You see 2,000 individuals have contributed to the campaign. I mean, do you feel like, it sounds like they're small donations too.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people giving. And I was talking to one of your people and they said, well, StephanieMoore.com has actually garnered a lot of that support. That it's actually created a lot of random donations from random people you may have not otherwise had connections to. What message on that website do you think is connecting to voters?
Well, I think people go to StephanieMoore.com and they see the issues of the campaign that Stephanie Moore doesn't really always want to talk about. The fact that she's been on $50,000 of trips paid for by special interest in taxpayers. The fact that she won't answer simple questions like who she'd vote for Speaker of the House. And I think they see that site and they see the same old politicians, the same old politics that are going on in Washington, and they realize that changing one more for another isn't going to fix things in Washington, that it's time to go a different direction, and they're investing in our campaign because of it.
Why do you think she won't answer the question about Nancy Pelosi?
I don't understand that either. I think that's what every voter wants to know in this district, why she can't answer a direct question. We have too many politicians in D.C. who double-speak and won't answer direct questions.
What does that have to do with anything, though, in the regards to Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, and she sets the entire agenda for Washington. So she's going to set the agenda on cap and trade, she's going to set the agenda on taxes, she's going to set the agenda on a budget. They have no budget in Washington this year. Her leadership is failing. It is not working. People want to see Nancy Pelosi, they want to see the gavel taken out of her hands. She's elected by congressmen and men and women who go to Washington and vote for Speaker of the House. I have pledged that my first vote will be a vote against Nancy Pelosi, will be a vote to take the gavel out of her hands. Stephanie Moore won't answer that same basic question of whether or not she'll vote to put Nancy Pelosi back in power again. That's a critical issue. This election could come down to 1 or 2 seats. The voters of the 3rd District could decide whether Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House again next year. That's a big deal.
So when she says that you're the career politician, it sounds like you're tying her more to Washington than ties that you might have because of her husband, because of the way they've used the special interest money, things like that.
That's right. I mean, she lives in Washington. She has spent a lot of her time in Washington, D.C., working with lobbyists and she's part of the Washington system. It doesn't work. I'm a public servant out here in Kansas. I'm proud of being a public servant. I'm someone who has worked very hard, grew up on a farm, someone who loves this community and wants to work to represent it. I'm not of Washington. She is, and I think that's a distinction voters want to look at.
Now, one last thing about the contributions. What does that say to you? What is the message that says to you when 2,000 people give, under 100, most of them under $100, and you're setting records doing it.
I think
again, does that mean more that you're a politician who's lived, 8 years in the State House, or does that mean that your message is resonating?
It means that our message is resonating with voters, and they're tired of sending the same old thing to Washington year after year and getting the same results, and they want someone new, energetic, who's going to stand up for them and let their voices be heard in Washington. And they see that I'm that candidate, and they're willing to invest in us because they know we are fighting special interest money coming out of Washington for our opponent. They're putting money into this race, and they're going to come here and try to keep the seat for Nancy Pelosi and the politicians in Washington. I believe at the end of the day, the voters here in the 3rd District want this seat back, and they want to be heard, and that's why they're supporting our campaign.
And this is the last thing. Anything that you think from this point forward that you're going to be focusing on? What do you think is the most important issue that voters should be listening to right now?
The number one thing voters should look at is which candidate is going to support policies that's going to get our country back to work again. The unemployment rate is a staggering high rate, almost 10%. It's not getting any better because of the policies coming out of Washington. Everything they're doing is growing the size of government, adding more tax burdens to taxpayers, increasing spending. Those failed policies are not working, and we need to go in a different direction. If people want to get the country working again, if they want to reduce the size of government, get spending back in line, they're going to have to elect a candidate that can do that. I'm that candidate, and I think voters need to realize that.
Okay, great.